Hello everyone, anyone, and welcome to my 100th video. You can call me socially distant, and today I'm doing something a little different, answering your questions. I had originally conceived of this as a bit more celebratory, something I would do on episode 100 rather than just video 100, since that would have more or less matched the channel's 2-year anniversary. But in case you haven't noticed, things are getting pretty wild out there. Basically everything in New York City is shut down, and it's likely to get worse before it gets better. Which has pretty significant implications for a YouTube channel largely predicated on reviewing things that I must leave my apartment to experience. So I wanted to talk about my plan, because barring hospitalization, the week I review isn't going anywhere. Maybe somehow for some people that will be comforting, but even if it's not, the reality is that having hashtag content is going to be more important now than ever, since everyone is stuck at home, bored out of their gosh damn minds and in need of things to watch. But I also wanted to make it more interesting than just an update video, hence the Q&A, and when everything has finally blown over and we're left to pick up the pieces of our civilization, I'm gonna straight up delete this part of the video and just leave that, which begins at the timecode on screen if you'd like to skip ahead. While the general aim of the week I review is to talk about the most interesting thing I did or saw in the previous week, I don't always exactly stick to that. You know, if I see a concert on Tuesday and then a new movie on Friday, I will usually get the movie review out first so I don't miss the buzz with the intention of doing the music review the following week. Sometimes that happens and I will post a video on something that I actually saw 2 or 3 weeks before, but other times I just never get a chance to go back to that other review, which is how I have ended up with at least 8 separate Word docs in various states of incompletion for things I have done or seen or listened to in the past 6 or 7 months. And my goal during this time is to finish at least half of those, and possibly more. Additionally, I'm expecting to catch up on some backlogs of various media, and depending on how that goes, I may make some more videos about older things. There's no specific plans there, but I did just watch both Contagion and Outbreak for the first time this past week, which might be worth talking about. In any case, don't expect a lot of super zeitgeisty stuff here for a little while. But how far it all goes will depend on how long the shutdowns last. In truth, social distancing will be necessary for far longer than people will accept, and New York isn't going to be able to stay shut for months, even if maybe it should be. But if May comes and we're still in the same place, I may start rethinking some of my rules, like the one that says I will only review comedy sets that I have seen in person, or my moratorium on podcasts, or whatever. I don't know. Honestly, if it gets to the point where I'm thinking about all of that, there will be much more important things to worry about than my dumb YouTube channel. And on that uplifting note, what do you say let's Q&A, huh? Okay, here we go. OG patrons Hamry Marco asked, are there any things that you have wanted to review but didn't, and why? I mentioned during my anniversary week series that I think of the week I review as a movie review channel that only sometimes talks about movies. You know, movies are my comfort zone, the thing that I have the most experience writing about, and so always something that I can fall back on. But they're not my favorite thing to review. On YouTube, at least, bands are. I love music, and I spend a lot of time listening to it, going to concerts, etc. More than half of my unfinished reviews are of bands, which comes down to my general lack of musical knowledge. If you read Pitchfork or watch an Anthony Fantano review, you just feel the encyclopedia underpinning what they say, and while I don't need to be on that level, I assume that the only reason anybody comes here is because they believe I have some type of authority on the week's subject. And if I know that I don't have that authority, I'm kind of wasting everybody's time. This is why I review bands and performers rather than just albums, and even then only those that I have seen live. I need to have my own journey with the band to use as an anchor point anytime I can feel myself leaving an actual base of knowledge. Additionally, the live show gives me the ability to compare the band to itself rather than the myriad influences and other members of the scene that I'm sure I've never heard of. Plus, I just like talking about experiencing a thing. And speaking of experience, my favorite things to review not on YouTube are video games. It's something I still do on occasion for the Daily Beast, but not here so much. I really like thinking, probably too deeply, about mechanics and how they play into and with narrative construction, but they take a lot of time. I feel weird about the fact that I use barely any game footage, and people don't watch them anyway. My Control review got less than 600 views, and even that was more than my other 2 game reviews combined. It's sad because I think all 3 of those reviews are good, and at least 2 of them are useful to the hashtag discourse. But if no one sees it, kinda doesn't matter. Because I don't get games early, by the time my review hits YouTube, it's lost in the flood. And while I try not to let analytics get in my way in general, this is a place where it has. I'm sure I'll review another game at some point, but it's not a priority for me in the way I had thought that it might be back when I put game on the calendar in my not very good but haven't gotten around to making something better channel banner. A very specific answer to the question is I started reviews of the finales for both The Good Place and BoJack Horseman, but I never finished them because they were just so much that I couldn't collect my thoughts, and then it felt like the moment was gone. Now that I've had some time to breathe and am locked in my apartment and time feels less important, I might go back to them, and if I do, they will be the highest rated things on this channel. Dungasaur asked, how do you feel your tastes have changed since you started reviewing, if at all? Have they shifted just because time has passed, or has bringing a critical eye altered something fundamental in how you perceive things? So, I mentioned in my best movies of the decade list that I started writing critically under my own name all the way back in 2011. I was 19 years old. And I kinda sucked back then, certainly more than I do now. I remember that one of my fears at the time was that I would lose the ability to see things uncritically because I wanted to just be able to sit back and turn my brain off and let things wash over me. And it happened. I lost the ability to not think about movies, and this has happened with video games as well. But I ultimately realized that it's not a bad thing, because life is pretty boring if you don't want to actually engage in the things you're experiencing. It doesn't mean that I like things just because they're pretentious and want to say something, or that I hate simple things that don't. Rather, I try to get on a work's level and accept it for what it is. And it means that I do like more things that are objectively pretentious, but also things that are not that at all. It's less that my tastes have changed than that they've expanded. I am far more open than I used to be. And it is not just film. Though I learned the lesson from movies, it has changed the way I experience a lot of things. For example, while I was figuring that out, I also got over my general disdain for modern art. I won't pretend like I understand it, really, but I definitely appreciate it now and actually enjoy my time at modern art museums in a way that teenage me just never did. Ugh, he was awful. OG patron cat Suricata asked, how do you feel knowing that you're responsible for a lot of people's first exposure to a particular work, and is there anything you regret reviewing up to now? I guess it's not something I've thought about all that much, to be honest, possibly because I don't have that many subscribers in the big picture, and so most of the people who watch any given video already know about a thing and find the video through search. So there are some people for whom each week may actually be new, and if I had 10 times as many views on any given video, I think that would be more true. But more often than not, I'm just another take in a sea of them that people are checking out. And my reviews are written to account for that. Back in the day, I wrote things that only had any value if you were trying to decide whether to go see something, and even that was questionable. They were basically bullet-pointed lists of, was the story good? How about the acting? Was the camera work good? They were boring and dumb, and if someone had already made the decision, I had absolutely nothing to offer them. I started to move away from that in late 2012, and the frequent YouTube comments telling me that they don't know how I actually feel about a given thing that I reviewed tells me that the transition has been successful. I like the idea that I'm introducing people to something new, obviously, but my hope is that I get the person to go experience the thing and then come back and engage with the review afterwards, because it will almost certainly be more meaningful for someone who has had the experience already than someone who hasn't. And my true ideal is that someone leaves the review thinking differently about the thing than they did coming in. If that happens, then I feel I've really succeeded. Did that answer your question? Probably not. As for the second part, yes, kind of. My review of Shane Dawson's feature-length finale of his series about Jake Paul is fine, and it was something I was genuinely interested in and had been watching of my own volition. But if we're being entirely honest, I don't think my motivations for doing the review were pure there. This was back when I was doing the clickbait titles to start off videos as my intro, and I hate what the one I had for that video was, to the point where I actually ended up removing it. I really thought that that video might hit and gain some traction, and I was wrong. It remains one of my least viewed videos, and that fact makes me feel a little less good about having done it in a way that my other low count videos do not. Get Lost Photo Club asked, do you have a set routine or process for analyzing and reviewing films? Do you take notes, have a preferred viewing experience, etc.? Also, do you think repeat viewings add to a critique either way? Fun fact, I have had multiple wrist surgeries that didn't quite heal right, and as a result, handwriting is painful. So I avoid it whenever possible and really only take notes on my phone. So if I'm in a theater or mid-screening and something pops up that seems significant, I just have to hope that I remember it. To help a little bit, I typically jot down some initial impressions or list moments that stuck out to me immediately afterwards. Those notes may or may not make it into the final review, but they are a useful guide and always something I can look back to if I get stuck. I talked more about my writing and these aspects of it in my review of my own process. That was part of the anniversary celebration. But when it comes to preferred viewing experience, I obviously prefer the theater. I have a pretty good TV here, so if I have to watch things at home, it's not the worst. But when I'm here, things are just more distracting, and a 65-inch TV just can never replicate the scale of a real movie screen. My actual preference is the middle seat of a Dolby theater between 4 and 6 rows back. I love it there, and really the whole Dolby experience is awesome, and it makes me very glad I have the AMC A-List subscription. I also love a proper IMAX screen, but the seats tend to be less comfortable. As for repeat viewings, I definitely think it makes a difference, and I always will if I can justify it. I like to see things without the weight of expectations, which is why I try so hard to avoid marketing. The less I know, the happier I am on the first watch, and then the second time around, I know exactly what I'm in for, and that's great too, because then I can see how it all fits together in ways I'm just not always capable of doing in retrospect. After a first screening, I think I can do a salad analysis based on one watch, but Sometimes you realize you missed one thing or focused too much on another, and a second viewing will ensure a clearer experience. Something that used to worry me a lot, but doesn't as much anymore, is the whole recency bias thing / getting caught up in the moment and overlooking something majorly flawed as a result. But I've given into the fact that reviews are reactions. No matter what I think in the future, any review captures the truth of that moment in time, and there's something kind of nice about that. Also, the vast majority of the time, that second viewing cements my initial impressions rather than undermines them. The only movie from the past few years that I rather enjoyed the first time around and felt substantially less good about on the second watch was Rogue One, and I didn't review that. The Stammering Dunce asked, are there any films that you dislike / hate but are somehow beloved by fellow film snobs? First of all, sir, I'm offended by the implication that I'm a film snob, but also, yes, plenty. For example, I've mentioned on multiple occasions my disinterest in the works of Hong Sang-soo, whose prolific output makes it harder for me to give him another try. It is possible I'd be more interested now for some of the reasons I discussed in my answer to Dungasaur's question, though I don't know. I imagine I would like Under the Skin quite a lot more the second time around than I did the first, where the weight of expectations mostly left me confused. But the real answer is the 2012 fishing documentary Leviathan. I hate that movie so fucking much, y'all. And I've had multiple conversations with people who loved it, and I think less of every single one of them as a result. As far as I can tell, the filmmakers attached GoPros to various places on and around a fishing boat and then just put the clips in a timeline and boom, that's the movie. Even if they're mostly beautiful for a few seconds, some even up to a minute, every single one overstays its welcome. And does that theoretically reflect the experience of a fisherman? Maybe? But I'm not going to give props to a movie for being boring because art reflects life, bro. Leviathan so clearly believes that it is this amazing cinematic experience, and it's just not. I actually rather disliked Tsai Ming Liang's 2013 film Stray Dogs for a similar reason. I think it would make an amazing coffee table book, just a still printed from each shot on like super nice paper. But that 13-minute take of two people staring off into the distance together is just too much. I don't care if it makes one person's decision to move at like minute 11 feel super impactful. It would have also been impactful at half the length. It's just indulgent for the sake of it. Okay, these are taking too long, so let's speed this up a little bit. Hannah Pearson asked, what makes a good comedy show? I want a comedian to tell me something I don't know. I want to be surprised. And there are different ways to do this with different degrees of significance. I don't expect Anthony Jeselnik to give me a new way to look at the world the way that Mike Birbiglia might, but I do expect him to say things nobody has ever said before, perfectly composed to make me giggle. A good comedian is someone with an interesting perspective who can articulate that perspective in a way that ultimately plays as funny. And a good comedy show is said comedian sustaining that for 30 to 90 minutes. Alex Offenkrantz asked, has making videos become a habit by this point? When you talk to the camera, do you have someone specific you imagine you're talking to? I don't know if making videos has become a habit per se, but it's definitely become part of my routine to the point where my Sunday feels really weird if it doesn't require me to shoot something in the morning and edit in the evening. I do quite appreciate those Sundays off, though. And I don't imagine that I'm talking to anyone. I know that I'm weird and alone in my living room staring at a camera, but I don't think about it really. Basically, all of my attention is on the words on the teleprompter and making sure that I don't mess them up. Gorilla Blu Productionz asked, besides Parasite, what's the best picture winner you believe the Oscars actually got right? Casablanca in 1943. Moonlight in 2017 was also correct, but that whole debacle with the announcement makes it not count as much. Jake McPherson asked, who is your favorite band? I tend to listen to one band at a time for a long time, but Spotify tells me that my band of the last decade was Starset, and I'm cool with that answer. At some point, I will review them and explain why. Hanzo asked, who is your favorite historical figure? What about horror monster? I feel like at some point in the past couple of years, I came up with a legit good answer for what historical figure would I have dinner with, but I can't remember it anymore, so I'm gonna go with Shakespeare. My favorite horror movie monster is Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. Hanzo also asked, do you sing, and can you sing in more videos? Yes and sure. Filson Ali asked, what is a movie you loved in your childhood that you still love as an adult? V for Vendetta. I did his introductory monologue, voila, in view, a humble vaudevillian veteran cast vicariously as both victim and villain, etc., as my own introductory monologue to theater camp, and V became my nickname and stuck through high school. I saw it again in November, and I'm still a big fan. To Get Through the Evening asked, what movie topic interests you to the point where you can be more forgiving of poor filmmaking skills? So what I want from any piece of art is true commitment from the creators. What makes So Bad They're Good movies good is the fact that the person or people behind them believed that they were making a masterpiece. They poured their blood, sweat, and tears into the project, but it just wasn't enough. I can genuinely appreciate that, even if I don't actually like the final result. Tyler Krtausch asked, any chance you'll make a video explaining your scoring system? Unlikely, but I can give you the short version. A 10 changes my perspective on life. 9.5 plus changes my perspective on its medium. 9 plus is one of my favorite things ever. 8 plus is great to exceptional. 7 plus is good to very good. 6 plus is decent to almost good. 5 plus is average to meh. 4 plus is subpar. 3 plus is straight up bad. 2 is horrendous. 1 makes my life actively worse by existing. I don't know if my scale here would go below a 1, but I did give a 9 out of 100 to the Japanese film A Woman in War back in 2013, so I guess it's possible. And that's it. You know, I thought Q&As were supposed to be easy, and that's why people did them. I'm not going to do this again anytime soon. But I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you got something out of it. Thank you to everyone who asked a question, and also to my patrons. Please stay safe and stay indoors if you are able. Wash your hands, etc. I will see you next week.